Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be doing something really fascinating. We're going to be diving into the world of quantum biology.
Wow. Quantum biology. That's a mouthful.
It is. It's where physics and biology collide.
Hmm.
And so to help me with this, I have a guest here who is an expert in quantum biology.
Well, expert, I don't know about that, but definitely fascinated by this field.
So before we jump in, maybe we could each give the listeners a little background on ourselves and how we each got interested in this area.
Sure. I'm a physicist by training. I spent years studying the bizarre world of quantum mechanics, particles popping in and out of existence, entanglement, all that weird stuff. And I always thought it was confined to the realm of the very small, atoms and subatomic particles.
Right.
But then I stumbled upon this idea that quantum phenomena might actually be playing a role in living organisms, in you and me.
Right.
And it just blew my mind.
Yeah. And my background is in biology. I mean, I've always been fascinated by the complexity of living organisms, how all those intricate processes work together to create life.
Right.
But I'll admit, when I first heard about quantum biology, I was a little skeptical. I mean, quantum mechanics in the warm, messy world of biology, it seems like a stretch.
Yeah, I can see why you'd think that.
But the more I dug into it, the more I realized that there's actually a lot of evidence that quantum mechanics is not just some weird quirk of the subatomic world, but actually a fundamental principle woven into the very fabric of life.
It's like suddenly we're seeing the familiar world of biology with new eyes, recognizing this hidden quantum dance happening at the most basic levels.
It's really changing the way we think about life itself. And for this deep dive, we're going to be using this amazing book, Life on the Edge, The Coming of Age of Quantum Biology, by Johnjoe McFadden and Jim Al-Khalili.
Great choice. It's a fantastic exploration of this field, really accessible even if you don't have a background in physics or biology.
Yeah, what's really cool is that the authors themselves, McFadden's a biologist and Al-Khalili is a physicist. So they had to bridge that gap themselves to explore this interdisciplinary field.
Yeah, it really highlights how quantum biology requires us to break down those traditional silos between scientific disciplines.
Absolutely. And in this deep dive, we're going to be tackling some really big questions, like how did life arise from non-living matter?
One of the biggest mysteries of all time.
I know, right? And could our brains actually be operating like quantum computers?
Whoa, that's a mind bender.
I know, it's pretty wild stuff. We're even going to be exploring the possibility of quantum consciousness. Could quantum mechanics hold the key to understanding our subjective experiences, our thoughts, our emotions, that sense of self?
It's a pretty deep rabbit hole, but I'm game if you are.
I'm definitely game. But before we jump into those mind-blowing topics, let's do a quick Quantum Mechanics 101, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Can you give us a crash course on the key quantum concepts that are relevant to biology?
You got it. So let's start with quantum tunneling. Imagine you're trying to roll a ball over a hill. If the ball doesn't have enough energy, it just won't make it right. It'll roll back down.
Makes sense.
But in the quantum world, particles can sometimes tunnel through those energy barriers, even if they don't have enough energy to go over them.
So it's like the ball magically disappears on one side of the hill and reappears on the other side.
Exactly. And this isn't just some theoretical quirk. Quantum tunneling is actually crucial for lots of processes in biology, like respiration, where electrons have to tunnel through proteins to release energy.
Okay.
It's even involved in photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis, the process where plants use sunlight to make food.
The very same. Quantum tunneling helps those energy packets hop between molecules in the plant cells. It's mind-boggling to think that something so fundamental to life relies on this seemingly impossible quantum phenomenon.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how those weird quantum effects are actually essential for life as we know it.
Yeah.
What else should we have in our quantum toolkit for this deep dive?
Well, next up is superposition. Imagine a coin spinning in the air.
Okay, got it.
Before it lands, it's both heads and tails at the same time.
Right.
That's kind of what superposition is like. Particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously until they're measured.
Okay, I think I get it. It's like they're in a state of maybe until something forces them to choose.
Exactly. And this maybe state, this superposition, is actually at the heart of how DNA works. Those protons that make up the genetic code, they can be in a superposition of states, which has big implications for how genetic information is stored and transmitted.
Okay, that is mind-blowing. So we've got tunneling, where particles defy energy barriers, and superposition, where they exist in multiple states at once. What's the third concept we need to know?
The third one is entanglement. This is what Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. It's when two particles become linked in a way that they can influence each other instantaneously, no matter how far apart they are. It's like they're connected by an invisible thread.
So imagine two coins spinning in different parts of the world, but somehow their spins are always correlated. If one lands on heads, the other one instantly lands on tails, even though there's no physical connection between them.
You got it. And this seemingly impossible connection might be the key to understanding some of the most mysterious abilities in nature, like how birds can navigate across continents using the Earth's magnetic field.
Wait, are you saying that birds might be using quantum entanglement to find their way?
It's a fascinating hypothesis, and there's growing evidence to support it. It seems like those tiny feathered creatures might have a built-in quantum compass guiding them on their epic journeys.
Okay, that is pretty amazing. So we've got quantum tunneling, superposition, and entanglement. Those are our quantum tools for this deep dive.
Those are the big ones, at least for our purposes today.
Awesome. Well, I think we're ready to go beyond the basics now. Let's dive into the book's exploration of life's origins.
Okay, so one of the fundamental questions that has always intrigued scientists is what distinguishes living matter from non-living matter?
Right.
What's that spark that makes something alive?
Yeah, it's a question that has puzzled philosophers and scientists for centuries.
Absolutely. For a long time, people believed in vitalism, the idea that living things possessed some special life force, something beyond the laws of physics and chemistry.
Right, like some kind of magical spark that animated living beings.
Exactly. But with the rise of modern science, that view was replaced by mechanism, the idea that life could be explained purely through physical and chemical processes, and that led to the triumph of biochemistry, the study of the molecules that make up living things.
So we went from magical life force to the intricate dance of molecules.
Exactly. And we've learned a lot about how those molecules interact and create the complex processes of life. But even with all our advances in biochemistry, there are still some aspects of life that seem to defy explanation through purely classical means.
You mean there's still some head scratchers out there?
Oh, absolutely. For example, life's remarkable ability to maintain order and complexity. It seems to contradict the second law of thermodynamics, which states that entropy, or disorder, always increases over time.
It's like life is constantly swimming upstream against the current of entropy.
Precisely. And that's where quantum mechanics comes in. Our book, Life on the Edge, actually begins with Erwin Schrödinger, the famous physicist behind Schrödinger's cat, and his fascination with this apparent paradox.
So Schrödinger, the guy who imagined a cat being both alive and dead at the same time, was pondering the mystery of life.
You got it. Schrödinger argued that life's ability to maintain order might rely on the precise arrangement of atoms at the quantum level, where those classical laws start to break down.
So instead of just a jumble of molecules, life might be tapping into the subtle but powerful rules of the quantum world to create order out of chaos.
Exactly. And to illustrate this idea, the book dives into the captivating example of a robin's migration.
Okay, I've always been amazed by how birds can navigate thousands of miles across continents. It seems almost magical.
Right. Imagine a tiny robin, weighing less than an ounce, flying from Canada to South America and back year after year, guided by an internal compass that's sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field.
It's incredible. It really makes you wonder, how on earth do they do that?
Well, for a long time, this remained a mystery. But there's this fascinating hypothesis that these birds might be tapping into the quantum world, specifically using a phenomenon called radical pairs.
Radical pairs. Are those like those supervillains in comic books?
Not quite. Radical pairs are molecules with unpaired electrons, and these electrons are like tiny magnets. When they become entangled, they become incredibly sensitive to magnetic fields, including the Earth's magnetic field.
So it's like the robin has a built-in quantum compass guiding it on its epic journey.
Exactly. And while this is still a hypothesis, there's growing evidence to support it. For example, scientists have found that disrupting the magnetic field around birds can actually interfere with their navigation.
Wow. Okay, so quantum mechanics might explain how a robin finds its way. But are there other examples of these quantum phenomena at play in the living world?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the most striking examples is found in the very engines of life. Enzymes.
Enzymes. Those are like the tiny machines that speed up biochemical reactions in our cells, right?
Exactly. They're nature's catalysts. But how they work with such incredible efficiency has puzzled scientists for a long time.
Yeah, I remember learning about enzymes in biology class, but I don't think we ever got into the nitty-gritty of how they actually work at the molecular level.
Well, it turns out that some enzymes might actually be utilizing quantum tunneling to achieve their remarkable feats.
Okay, so back to that ball tunneling through the hill analogy. How does that apply to enzymes?
Well, imagine an enzyme trying to break apart a molecule. It needs to overcome an energy barrier to do so. But instead of going over the barrier, it can sometimes tunnel through it, thanks to quantum mechanics.
So the enzyme is like a tiny bulldozer, using quantum tunneling to break through those molecular walls.
That's a great way to put it. And this ability to tunnel through energy barriers could explain how enzymes can catalyze reactions at speeds that would be impossible according to classical chemistry.
Okay, so this is getting really interesting. Are there any specific examples of enzymes using quantum tunneling?
Oh, absolutely. The book talks about an enzyme called collagenase, which helps tadpoles lose their tails as they transform into frogs.
Wait, what? Enzymes are involved in tadpoles losing their tails.
You got it. Collagenase breaks down collagen, which is the protein that gives structure to the tail. It's a perfect example of an enzyme breaking down strong bonds with the help of quantum tunneling.
So it's like those tiny enzymes are little demolition crews using quantum mechanics to dismantle the tadpole's tail.
Exactly. And to make things even more fascinating, scientists have found that by replacing hydrogen atoms with their heavier cousin, deuterium, in certain molecules, they can actually slow down enzymatic reactions.
Hold on, how does changing a tiny atom like that make a difference?
Well, deuterium is twice as heavy as hydrogen, and this affects the way molecules vibrate. And it turns out that these vibrations play a role in quantum tunneling. Heavier atoms are less likely to tunnel.
So even tiny changes at the atomic level can reveal the hidden quantum dance happening within living organisms.
Exactly. And this brings us to another fascinating example of quantum mechanics in action. Our sense of smell.
Okay, I've always wondered how our noses translate those tiny molecules floating in the air into distinct smells.
Yeah, it's one of those things we take for granted, but it's actually incredibly complex. The traditional explanation is what's called the shape theory, where odorant molecules fit into specific receptors in our noses, kind of like a key fitting into a lock.
Right, I remember learning about that in school. But is that the whole story?
Well, there are some problems with this theory. For example, molecules with very similar shapes can sometimes have completely different smells.
So if shape isn't the whole story, what else could be going on?
There's this somewhat controversial theory, proposed by Luca Turin, that suggests that our noses might actually be detecting the vibrations of molecules rather than just their shape, and this is where quantum mechanics comes in.
Wait, are you saying that our noses might be acting like tiny spectrometers, sensing the vibrational frequencies of those odorant molecules?
That's the idea. And this sensing of molecular vibrations might be happening through a process called inelastic electron tunneling. It's a bit complicated, but essentially it involves the transfer of energy from one molecule to another through the quantum tunneling of an electron.
Okay, I'm trying to follow along here. So the energy transfer depends on the vibrational frequency of the molecule, and our noses somehow pick up on that energy difference.
Exactly. And this theory could explain why molecules with similar shapes can smell different if they have distinct vibrational frequencies.
So we've gone from birds navigating with quantum compasses to our noses acting like tiny quantum spectrometers. Where else can we find these mind-boggling quantum phenomena at play in the living world?
Well, let's delve into the very heart of heredity. Our genes. DNA, the molecule that carries our genetic information, is remarkably stable, capable of preserving information for millennia.
It's like nature's hard drive, storing the blueprint of life.
Exactly. But DNA is also subject to mutations, those random changes in its sequence that can be caused by radiation or errors in DNA replication. These mutations are the raw material for evolution, the driving force behind the diversity of life on Earth.
So mutations are like nature's way of experimenting, introducing variations that natural selection can act upon.
Precisely. But what if I told you that quantum mechanics might actually be playing a role in those seemingly random mutations?
Wait, are you saying that those mutations might not be so random after all? Could quantum phenomena be influencing the very code of life?
It's a fascinating possibility. Remember those protons we talked about in DNA? The ones that determine the genetic code? Well, it turns out that those protons can exhibit quantum behavior, specifically quantum tunneling.
So it's like those protons can tunnel from one position to another within the DNA molecule.
Exactly. And this tunneling could potentially lead to a change in the genetic code, a mutation. The book Life on the Edge proposes a fascinating model involving quantum tunneling and measurement to explain how this might work.
Okay, can you break it down for him? I'm trying to picture this in my mind.
Imagine a proton in the DNA molecule existing in a superposition of two states, mutated and non-mutated. It's both at the same time until something forces it to choose.
So it's like the proton is flipping a coin, heads for mutated, tails for non-mutated, but the coin is still spinning in the air until it lands.
That's a great analogy. And the act of landing, of forcing the proton to choose one state or the other, might be something like the DNA replication process, where the genetic code is read and copied.
So instead of those mutations being completely random, it's like the environment might be playing a role in influencing the outcome of that quantum measurement.
Exactly. And while this is still a speculative model, it highlights the potential for quantum mechanics to influence the very fabric of heredity, the code of life itself.
This is really making me rethink everything I thought I knew about biology. If quantum mechanics is involved in mutations, it adds a whole new layer of complexity to the story of evolution.
It really does. And it leads us to one of the most mind-boggling questions of all: the nature of consciousness. Could quantum mechanics hold the key to understanding how our brains give rise to our thoughts, feelings, and experiences?
Okay, I think we're officially entering the deep end of the quantum pool now. This is where things start to get really trippy.
To explore this question, let's take a journey back in time. Tens of thousands of years to the Chauvet Cave in southern France. Imagine stepping into this vast cavern adorned with these incredibly detailed paintings of animals created by our ancestors over 30,000 years ago.
Oh, wow. I've seen pictures of those cave paintings. They're absolutely breathtaking.
They really are, and they offer a glimpse into the minds of early humans, their capacity for creativity and abstract thought. But they also raise a profound question. How did those early humans conceive of those images in their minds? How did they translate those mental images into physical reality, using pigments and charcoal to create those breathtaking works of art?
It's like asking, how can a thought, an idea, move matter? Is consciousness just a complex input-output system like a computer, or is there something more at play?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? That has puzzled philosophers and scientists for centuries. And while we don't have a definitive answer yet, some researchers believe that quantum mechanics might actually offer some intriguing clues.
Okay, I'm ready for another dose of quantum weirdness. What kind of clues are we talking about?
Well, our brains are incredibly complex organs with billions of neurons firing electrical signals and communicating with each other through chemical messengers.
Right?
It's tempting to think of the brain as a sophisticated computer processing information according to the laws of classical physics.
Right, with neurons acting like tiny transistors, sending and receiving signals in a predictable manner.
But there are some aspects of consciousness that defy explanation through those purely classical models. For example, the binding problem. It asks how our brains integrate information from different senses and brain regions to create a unified conscious experience.
Yeah, it's like, how do we experience the world as a seamless whole, rather than a jumble of disconnected sensations and thoughts?
Exactly. And some researchers believe that quantum phenomena, specifically quantum entanglement, might offer a possible solution to this binding problem. Imagine different neurons or groups of neurons becoming entangled, allowing them to share information instantaneously and create that unified conscious experience.
So instead of just electrical and chemical signals, it's like there's this deeper level of connection happening at the quantum level, linking different parts of the brain together.
That's the idea. And while this is still a highly speculative area of research, it highlights the potential for quantum mechanics to play a role in the most fundamental aspects of our being, our conscious awareness.
But hold on, didn't we talk about decoherence earlier? That those delicate quantum states are easily disrupted by the environment. How could they possibly survive in the warm, noisy environment of the brain?
That's a valid point. And it's one of the major challenges facing any theory that invokes quantum mechanics to explain consciousness. However, some researchers believe that certain structures within the brain, like microtubules, might be able to shield quantum states from decoherence for long enough to allow them to play a role in consciousness.
Microtubules. Those are the tiny protein structures that provide support for cells, right?
Exactly. And some researchers believe that they might also act as quantum information processors, utilizing quantum phenomena to orchestrate the complex symphony of consciousness.
Okay, I'm starting to get a headache just thinking about all this. But it's fascinating to consider the possibility that our brains might be tapping into the quantum world to create our conscious experiences.
Indeed. And this leads us to another intriguing concept: Quantum computation. Quantum computers are these theoretical devices that exploit quantum phenomena like superposition and entanglement to perform calculations that would be impossible for classical computers.
Right, I've heard about quantum computers. They're supposed to be able to solve certain problems exponentially faster than traditional computers, like cracking the encryption codes that protect our online data.
That's one example. And some researchers believe that the brain might actually be a quantum computer, utilizing those same quantum phenomena to achieve its remarkable processing power.
But how could something as complex and messy as the brain maintain the coherence needed for quantum computation? It seems like a long shot.
It does. And while the idea of the brain as a quantum computer is still highly speculative, there are some tantalizing hints that it might be possible. For example, some researchers have proposed that the brain's electromagnetic field might play a role in binding information together and possibly even housing consciousness.
So instead of just neurons firing signals, it's like there's this whole electromagnetic field that's somehow orchestrating the show, maybe even acting as a kind of quantum glue that holds our thoughts and experiences together.
That's the idea. And while we're still a long way from understanding how this might work, it opens up this whole new realm of possibilities for how the brain might be utilizing quantum mechanics.
Okay, so we've journeyed from the quantum world of entangled electrons to the mind-boggling realm of consciousness. I'm starting to see how those seemingly disparate realms might be intimately connected.
And as we continue to explore the quantum world, we're likely to uncover even more amazing possibilities for how it shapes the processes of life, from the smallest molecules to the most complex thoughts and emotions.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the potential of quantum biology to revolutionize our understanding of life. It's like we're on the verge of a whole new scientific revolution, isn't it?
It really feels that way, and we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore, from the potential of quantum therapies to the ethical considerations of manipulating life at the quantum level.
But for now, let's take a break from these mind-bending ideas and return to the more grounded yet equally fascinating question of life's origins. Where did it all begin? How did those first primitive life forms emerge from the primordial soup?
That's a question that has fascinated scientists for centuries, and one that's still shrouded in mystery. But don't worry, we'll be tackling that head-on in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock, billions of years, and see if we can catch a glimpse of those first sparks of life. And to do that, we're going to journey to one of the most extreme environments on Earth, Lake Vostok, buried beneath the thick ice of Antarctica.
Lake Vostok. It's like a lost world frozen in time.
It's a place where life exists against all odds, where we might find clues to how those first life forms emerged from the non-living world.
It's a perfect example of how life finds a way, even in the most unexpected places.
And it might just hold the key to unlocking the secrets of our own origins. But for now, we'll leave you with that tantalizing thought. Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive, where we'll delve into the mysteries of Lake Vostok and explore the fascinating role of quantum mechanics in the emergence of life.
We'll see you there. Welcome back to our deep dive into quantum biology. It's amazing to think that even the very origin of life, that spark of complexity from the primordial soup, might have a quantum connection.
It really makes you wonder, right? We talked about the RNA world hypothesis, with RNA being that early multitasker. But creating those first self-replicating RNA molecules,
Yeah.
that's a huge hurdle.
It is a huge hurdle. And, we talked about the computer virus analogy, and even in the digital world where things should be easier, we don't see spontaneous self-replication happening.
Yeah, that really drove home the point that chance alone might not be enough. So could quantum mechanics have helped to bridge that gap from non-living to living matter?
It's a possibility worth considering. Many origin of life theories focus on this bottom-up approach.
Right, building complexity from simple molecules bumping into each other.
Exactly. But that's like trying to build a sandcastle in a wave pool. Those early molecules would have been constantly bombarded by energy, facing harsh conditions. It's tough to imagine how they could have assembled into something stable and self-replicating.
So are you suggesting we flip the script, go top down, start with something more organized?
Exactly. What if, instead of those isolated molecules, we start with a network? Something connected by quantum entanglement that would provide inherent stability, organization, setting the stage for self-replication.
Okay, I'm picturing it now. A network of molecules linked by those invisible quantum threads, exchanging information and influencing each other instantly, even across distances. A coordinated dance where everyone knows the steps.
I love that analogy. And while the exact mechanism is still a mystery, some researchers believe that certain mineral surfaces, like clay, might have acted as catalysts, helping those first quantum networks to form.
So those primordial molecules gather on these clay surfaces, like dancers finding their stage, and then the quantum magic starts to happen.
Precisely. And once these networks formed, they could start interacting with their environment, absorbing energy, and evolving through a process similar to natural selection. This quantum jump in complexity could be the missing piece in our origin of life puzzle.
It really is mind-boggling to think that the very essence of life, the drive towards order and complexity, might be rooted in those intangible quantum connections.
It changes the way we see the world, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And this quantum perspective might hold the key to unlocking new possibilities, not just for understanding life's origins, but also for treating diseases and even creating new forms of life.
Exactly. We've already touched on quantum sensing for early disease detection, but think about quantum therapies. Treatments that utilize quantum phenomena to target and repair damaged cells or tissues.
Okay, that sounds futuristic. Is this something out of Star Trek, or are we talking about real possibilities here?
While it's still early days, there's a lot of research and investment going on in this area. Imagine using quantum entanglement to deliver drugs directly to diseased cells, minimizing side effects.
That would be revolutionary, especially for something like cancer treatment.
Right. Or think about using quantum dots, these tiny semiconductor particles with quantum properties, to target and destroy cancer cells with a laser-like precision.
Wow. Sending those quantum dots on a seek and destroy mission, eliminating those harmful cells without damaging the surrounding tissue.
Exactly. And it goes even further, enhancing gene therapy, developing new vaccines, even repairing tissues at the molecular level.
It sounds like quantum biology is not just about understanding life, but about harnessing its secrets to heal and improve our own existence.
I think so. But like any powerful technology, we need to be cautious. Manipulating life at the quantum level raises some serious ethical questions that we, as a society, need to address.
You're absolutely right. We're holding a powerful tool that could be used for good, but it also has the potential for unintended consequences. We need to have some open and honest discussions about the benefits and risks of quantum biology as we move forward.
I completely agree. Open dialogue is crucial. As we gain this ability to manipulate living systems at such a fundamental level, we have to ensure these technologies are developed and used ethically.
It's a lot to consider. On one hand, it's thrilling to be on the verge of this quantum revolution in biology, with the potential to reshape our understanding of life and our ability to heal and enhance it.
It is exciting, and maybe even create entirely new forms of life.
Mind-blowing. This deep dive has really challenged my assumptions about the world. What are some of the most thought-provoking questions that you've encountered in this field?
For me, it's how far we can push those boundaries of life itself. If we can understand and manipulate life at the quantum level, could we create new forms of life, organisms with capabilities we haven't even imagined?
That's a huge question, one we need to approach carefully. But for now, let's step back from those practical implications and venture into something more philosophical.
You mean delve into the mysteries of consciousness?
Exactly. We touched on the brain as a quantum computer, but I want to explore this concept of quantum consciousness, the idea that consciousness itself might be a quantum phenomenon.
It's an intriguing idea. We've seen how quantum mechanics might be involved in so much, from bird navigation to photosynthesis. Could it also explain our subjective experience?
Right, those feelings, thoughts, that sense of self, could it all be rooted in the quantum world?
We're going to need to dive even deeper to explore that. But before we jump in, let's recap what we've learned so far, just to make sure everyone's still with us.
Okay, a little quantum intermission before we tackle the big questions of consciousness. So we've explored how quantum mechanics is potentially involved in a wide range of biological processes, from the origins of life to those revolutionary new therapies.
We've seen how those quantum phenomena, those weird things like tunneling, superposition, and entanglement, might actually be woven into the very fabric of life.
We've gone from the primordial soup to the frontiers of medicine, from molecules to consciousness. And everywhere we look, there are hints of that hidden quantum dance.
It's a whole new way of looking at the world, isn't it?
Absolutely. And with that in mind, I think we're ready to tackle the mind-boggling concept of quantum consciousness. Are you ready to explore the uncharted territories of this fascinating field?
Let's do it. I'm ready to dive into those deep waters.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've explored so much already, from those early hints of life in the primordial soup to the potential for quantum therapies to revolutionize medicine. It's amazing what we've covered.
Yeah, right? All thanks to your curiosity about this mind-bending field of quantum biology.
And now, as promised, we're saving the most mind-boggling concept for last: quantum consciousness. We've touched on the brain as a quantum computer. But how could quantum mechanics explain our subjective experiences, our thoughts, emotions, even that sense of self that makes you you?
Yeah, it's a question that's fascinated thinkers for centuries. How does a physical organ like the brain, with its neurons and synapses, give rise to something as intangible as consciousness?
It's the ultimate mystery, isn't
It
it?
really is.
Oh,
And, we've explored how quantum entanglement might connect different brain regions to create a unified experience.
right.
But this idea that consciousness itself is a quantum phenomenon, that's a whole other level.
Okay, I'm ready to go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
What are some of the key ideas behind this quantum consciousness theory?
Well, one of the most prominent proponents is Roger Penrose.
Penrose, the physicist.
Yes, a brilliant physicist and mathematician. And he, along with anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, proposed this model where those tiny microtubules we talked about earlier, the ones that provide structural support inside cells, they think those might actually be the brain's quantum information processors.
Hold on, so those tiny tubes, they're doing more than just scaffolding.
Right.
They're like the brain's version of quantum bits, qubits.
That's the idea. They suggest that consciousness arises from quantum computations happening within these microtubules.
But how could such delicate quantum processes survive in the warm, wet, chaotic environment of the brain? Wouldn't that lead to decoherence, where those quantum properties just disappear?
Well, it's a valid challenge for sure, and one that Penrose and Hameroff addressed in their model. They suggest that the microtubule structure might provide a protected environment,
Okay.
shielding those quantum computations from the disruptive noise of the surroundings.
So the microtubules are like tiny quantum sanctuaries, where these mind-boggling computations can happen undisturbed.
Exactly. And what's interesting? Some studies have shown that anesthetics, which we use to, switch off consciousness during surgery,
Right.
they might actually interfere with quantum processes in these microtubules.
Oh, wow. So it's like the anesthetic is throwing a wrench into the brain's quantum computer, disrupting those subtle processes that give rise to our awareness.
That's one way to think about it. And while this research is still preliminary, it's this fascinating hint that quantum mechanics might be playing a much deeper role in consciousness than we ever imagined.
It's incredible.
Uh-huh.
But if consciousness is a quantum phenomenon, what does that say about free will?
Ah, yes. The age-old question.
If our thoughts are ultimately governed by quantum mechanics, does that mean our choices are predetermined?
Well, it's a philosophical question that's been debated for centuries.
Yeah.
And quantum mechanics definitely adds another layer of complexity.
Right, because now you have chance and unpredictability inherent to the quantum world all mixed in.
Exactly. But, I think it's important to remember that quantum mechanics doesn't necessarily contradict the idea of free will. Some interpretations suggest that those quantum events might actually provide a mechanism for genuine choice.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Spontaneity, even within the framework of physical laws.
So maybe free will isn't about breaking the laws of physics, but about harnessing those quantum possibilities to make genuine choices.
It's a fascinating possibility, and while we may never have a definitive answer to this question of free will, exploring this intersection of quantum mechanics and consciousness really opens up new ways of understanding that relationship between mind and matter.
It really is amazing to think that our subjective experiences, the things that make us uniquely human, might be intimately connected to this strange and wonderful world of quantum mechanics.
Absolutely. And as we continue to explore this uncharted territory, we're bound to uncover even more mind-boggling connections between the quantum realm and the mysteries of life and consciousness.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey, from the fundamental principles of quantum mechanics to the far reaches of consciousness, and this potential for creating entirely new forms of life. What a way to wrap things up.
I agree. It's been fantastic.
And to all our listeners, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity about the quantum world and all its implications for biology. Who knows what incredible discoveries await us as we continue to explore this fascinating frontier.
Keep asking those big questions and never stop exploring.
Until next time, on The Deep Dive.